The bitter wind howled through the Adirondack Mountains, carrying whispers of untold secrets across the valleys of Lake Placid. Officer Michael Carter drummed his fingers on the steering wheel of his patrol car, his experienced eyes scanning the darkness ahead. Beside him, Emily Jenkins, his rookie partner of 3 months, maintained a vigilant watch, her determination to prove herself evident in her rigid posture. "Another quiet night," Emily commented, breaking the silence that had settled between them. Michael merely nodded, his attention drawn to something unusual in the distance. The old stone bridge, a forgotten relic of the town's history, loomed ahead, its weathered surface barely visible in the dim moonlight. As they approached the bridge, a high-pitched sound pierced the night air, causing both officers to exchange concerned glances. Michael slowly pulled the patrol car to a stop, his instincts honed by 15 years on the force telling him something was amiss. "Let's check it out," he said, reaching for his flashlight. Emily followed suit, her hand instinctively checking her utility belt as they stepped out into the frigid night air. The sound grew clearer as they approached the bridge, a whimper, desperate and pleading. Their flashlight beams cut through the darkness, revealing a scene that made Emily's heart catch in her throat. Huddled beneath the ancient stone structure was a Belgian shepherd, her thin frame trembling with cold and exhaustion. Beside her lay 3 tiny puppies, their eyes barely open to the world. "Poor things," Emily whispered, taking a step forward. But Michael's hand shot out, stopping her. His flashlight beam had caught something else, footprints in the mud surrounding the dogs, fresh and numerous. Broken branches nearby suggested someone had recently fled the scene in haste. As they carefully approached the shepherd, Michael noticed something odd about her collar. Ancient symbols were etched into the worn leather, unlike anything he'd seen before. The dog watched them warily but didn't move from her protective position over her puppies. "We should call animal control," Emily suggested, but her words were cut short by a rustling sound from the nearby woods. Both officers turned sharply, their lights scanning the tree line. For a brief moment, Michael could have sworn he saw a figure standing among the shadows, watching them. Emily's sharp intake of breath drew his attention back to the scene before them. She was holding a piece of paper, found taped to a nearby tree trunk. In the harsh beam of their flashlights, 4 words stood out in stark black ink: "You shouldn't be here." The shepherd, whom Emily had already started calling Luna, refused to leave her spot, even as they tried to coax her with treats from their patrol car. She remained fixed in place, her dark eyes focused on something beyond their understanding, something hidden in the shadows of the ancient bridge. As they waited for animal control to arrive, Michael examined the base of the bridge more closely. His flashlight revealed what appeared to be carved symbols in the stone, similar to those on Luna's collar, weathered by time but still visible. A chill ran down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold night air. The sound of approaching vehicles broke the eerie silence. As the animal control van pulled up, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that they had stumbled upon something far more significant than abandoned animals. Luna's eyes seemed to hold secrets, and the bridge, standing silent and ancient against the starlit sky, appeared to mock their ignorance of its true purpose. Neither officer noticed the hooded figure watching from the tree lane, or heard the soft metallic clicking sound that echoed through the valley as they helped load Luna and her puppies into the animal control van. But both felt an inexplicable sense of unease, as if they had just taken the first step down a path from which there would be no return. If this story has caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Let's continue. The morning sun cast long shadows across Lake Placid's municipal animal shelter as Michael and Emily arrived for their follow-up investigation. Luna and her puppies had spent the night under observation, but the veterinarian's report only deepened the mysteries surrounding their discovery. "The symbols on her collar," Dr. Sarah Chin explained, pointing to photographs she'd taken, "they're unlike anything I've seen in my 20 years of practice. And there's something else." She led them to where Luna was being kept, separated from her puppies, but still able to see them. "Watch this." Dr. Chin approached Luna with a simple pendant, a crystal hanging from a leather cord. The moment she held it near the dog, Luna's demeanor changed dramatically. Her ears perked up, and she began pawing at the ground in a distinct pattern, her eyes fixed on something invisible to the humans in the room. Emily knelt beside Luna, studying her behavior. "It's almost like she's trying to communicate," she murmured, pulling out her phone to record the strange display. As she did, the lights in the room flickered briefly, and a cold draft swept through the enclosed space despite all windows being shut. Michael's attention was drawn to Luna's collar again. In the daylight, the symbols seemed to shift and change, appearing different from various angles. He carefully photographed each marking, noting their similarity to the carvings they'd found on the bridge. "There's more," Dr. Chin continued, pulling up additional photos on her tablet. "Look at this marking behind her left ear." The image showed a small symbol, almost like a birthmark, in the shape of what appeared to be an ancient rune. "It's not a tattoo or brand, it's as if she was born with it." As they examined the evidence, Emily received a call from the station. The database search on similar symbols had yielded results from an unexpected source, a series of historical documents from the Lake Placid Historical Society, dating back to the early 1900s. The documents mentioned a secretive group that used similar markings in their practices, often involving animals as guardians of what they called threshold points. Michael was about to suggest they head to the Historical Society when Luna suddenly began barking intensely at the window. Outside, a figure in dark clothing stood in the parking lot, watching the building. By the time Michael and Emily rushed outside, the person had vanished, leaving behind only footprints in the morning dew and another note: "The Guardians must return. Time is running out." The puppies, meanwhile, had started exhibiting unusual behavior of their own. Despite being separated from their mother, they would consistently orient themselves toward the direction of the old stone bridge, as if drawn by an invisible force. The shelter staff reported hearing strange metallic sounds coming from their kennel during the night, though no source could be identified. Emily spent her lunch break researching the bridge's history on her laptop. The structure, she discovered, had been built in 1887, but the original architectural plans had mysteriously vanished from town records. More intriguingly, she found references to local legends about the bridge serving as a crossing point, not just over water, but between worlds. As the day progressed, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every time he glanced out the shelter's windows, shadows seemed to move just at the edge of his vision. The symbols in his photographs appeared to blur inexplicably, making documentation increasingly difficult. Dr. Chin approached them one final time before their departure, holding a small box she'd found hidden in Luna's collar, a compartment so well concealed it had initially escaped notice. Inside was a key, ancient and ornate, its surface covered in the same mysterious symbols. But perhaps most disturbing was the fresh scratching they discovered on the kennel wall behind Luna's bed, a perfect replica of one of the symbols from the bridge. The Lake Placid Historical Society building stood like a sentinel of the past, its Victorian architecture a stark contrast to the modern structures surrounding it. Michael and Emily arrived just as the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the tall windows, the ancient key from Luna's collar weighing heavily in Michael's pocket. Marian Blackwood, the Society's elderly archivist, adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses as she examined their photographs of the symbols. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes remained sharp and alert. "I haven't seen these markings in over 40 years, she whispered, her voice carrying an edge of concern. She led them through narrow aisles of filing cabinets to a locked room at the back of the building. Inside, rolled maps and dusty volumes lined the walls. Marian pulled out a leather-bound journal, its pages yellow with age. This belonged to Theodore Hammond, one of the original bridge architects. But he was more than that. He was part of a group called the Threshold Guardians. As Marian opened the journal, Emily noticed strange symbols pressed into the leather cover, identical to those on Luna's collar. The pages contained detailed drawings of the bridge, but with additional structures that didn't exist in the current construction. Underground chambers, hidden passages, and most intriguingly, references to something called the crossing point. Hammond wrote about a secret society that believed certain locations served as bridges between worlds, Marian explained, carefully turning the brittle pages. They used specially trained dogs as guardians, believing the animals could sense disturbances between these realms. The symbols were meant to be a form of communication, a language understood by both the Guardians and their handlers. Michael's phone buzzed, a text from Dr. Chen. Luna had escaped. Somehow, she had managed to unlock her kennel and disappear from the shelter, leaving her puppies behind. But the security cameras had captured something extraordinary. Just before her disappearance, all the symbols on her collar had begun to glow with a faint blue light. As they prepared to leave, Marion grabbed Michael's arm. "There's something else you need to see." She pulled out a map dated 1888, showing the original construction site of the bridge. Marked in faded red ink was a clearing in the woods, about half a mile from the bridge. Hammond mentioned this place in his final entry. He called it the Gateway. The sun was setting as Michael and Emily found the clearing, following the old map's guidance. The space was perfectly circular, as if carved intentionally into the forest. At its center, they discovered the remains of a recent fire, and beside it, a partially buried wooden chest. The chest was empty, but its interior was lined with the same symbols they'd been tracking. Emily's flashlight beam caught something metallic glinting in the dirt. Kneeling down, she uncovered a medallion, its surface etched with intricate patterns that matched the key from Luna's collar. As she lifted it, a low humming sound filled the air, and the temperature around them dropped dramatically. Michael's radio crackled to life, emitting strange frequencies that seemed to form patterns that matched the rhythm of Luna's pawing at the shelter. Emily quickly recorded the sound on her phone, her hands shaking as she noticed that the medallion in her palm had grown inexplicably warm. The sound of branches breaking behind them caused both officers to spin around. There, at the edge of the clearing, stood a figure wearing a hooded robe decorated with familiar symbols. Before they could react, the figure spoke, its voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. "The Guardian has returned to her post. The crossing is beginning. You've unlocked something that cannot be contained." As if in response to these words, a distant howl echoed through the mountains, Luna's distinctive call, but somehow different, more powerful. The medallion in Emily's hand began to pulse with a soft blue light, matching the rhythm of the distant howling. The hooded figure raised its arms, revealing hands covered in glowing markings, and the very air around them seemed to shimmer with an ethereal energy. The hooded figure's words hung in the frigid air as Michael and Emily stood transfixed in the clearing. The medallion continued to pulse with an otherworldly blue light, its warmth spreading up Emily's arm like a gentle current. The figure took a step forward, moonlight catching the intricate embroidery on its robe, patterns that seemed to shift and move of their own accord. "We are the keepers," the figure spoke, lowering its hood to reveal an elderly man with striking silver eyes. "I am Thomas Hammond, grandson of Theodore Hammond. We've been waiting for the signs, and now they're here." The Guardian has sensed it. His gaze fixed on the medallion in Emily's hand, which had begun to resonate with an audible hum. Michael's training urged him to draw his weapon, but something held him back. "What signs? What is Luna guarding?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the supernatural display before them. The temperature continued to drop, their breath visible in the increasingly dense air. Thomas raised his hands, revealing intricate tattoos that matched the symbols from the bridge. Every century, the veil between worlds grows thin. The ancient ones built bridges, not just physical crossings, but gateways between realms. Luna's bloodline has guarded the Lake Placid crossing for generations. Those puppies? They're not just offspring, they're the next generation of guardians. Emily's police radio suddenly crackled to life, emitting the same strange frequencies they'd heard earlier. But this time, hidden within the static, they could make out words, ancient phrases, and a language none of them recognized. The medallion's pulsing intensified, synchronized with the mysterious broadcast. "The previous guardian vanished 3 months ago," Thomas continued, his expression grave. "We feared the worst until Luna appeared. She carries the mark of the crossing, the symbol behind her ear. When we found her, we knew she would lead us to those worthy of understanding the truth." As if summoned by his words, Luna emerged from the darkness, her fur shimmering with an ethereal blue glow. The symbols on her collar matched the pulsing of the medallion perfectly. She approached Emily, eyes glowing with intelligence far beyond that of a normal animal, and gently tipped the medallion in her mouth. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate, and the air filled with a low, resonant tone. Luna walked purposefully toward the edge of the clearing, stopping at a spot where the moonlight seemed to pool unnaturally on the forest floor. The medallion's light intensified, revealing previously invisible markings in the soil, an intricate pattern of symbols forming a perfect circle. "The gateway is awakening," Thomas whispered, his voice filled with both awe and apprehension. "Every 100 years, the crossing allows passage between our world and theirs. The Guardians maintain the balance, ensuring only those worthy may pass. But something has changed this cycle. The timing is wrong, it's too early." Michael's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Dr. Chen. The puppies had begun to glow with the same ethereal light as their mother, their tiny forms emanating pulses of energy that interfered with the shelter's electrical systems. The entire building had been evaluated as a precaution. Luna placed the medallion in the center of the newly revealed circle, and the symbols etched into the ground began to illuminate one by one. The air above the circle started to ripple like heat waves on a summer road, but instead of heat, waves of cold energy pulsed outward. Through the distortion, they could almost make out shapes, another world bleeding through into their own. "We need your help," Thomas said urgently, his eyes reflecting the supernatural light. "The barriers between worlds are weakening prematurely. Someone has been tampering with the ancient safeguards. If we don't act soon, both realms could collapse into chaos. Luna chose you both for a reason. You are now part of something much bigger than yourselves." The mystical circle in the clearing pulsed with increasing intensity, its otherworldly light casting strange shadows through the trees. Emily and Michael stood with Thomas Hammond, watching as Luna paced the circumference of the glowing symbols, her movements deliberate and precise. The air had become so thick with energy that it felt like walking through water. "There are others," Thomas revealed, his silver eyes reflecting the supernatural illumination. "Rogue keepers who believe the barriers between worlds should be permanently opened. They've been systematically weakening the ancient safeguards at crossing points around the globe. Lake Placid was meant to be their final target." As if confirming his words, new figures emerged from the shadows, 3 individuals wearing robes adorned with corrupted versions of the sacred symbols. Their leader, a woman with stark white hair and eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, stepped forward. "The time of separation is over, Thomas," she announced, her voice carrying an unnatural resonance. "Humanity has been blind to the truth for too long. The other realm calls to us." She held up an artifact that looked like a twisted version of Emily's medallion, its surface crawling with dark energy. Luna's growl reverberated through the clearing with supernatural force. The puppies at the shelter, miles away, began howling in unison, their cries reaching them through Dr. Chen's frantic phone call. The symbols on Luna's collar blazed brighter, and the air around her shimmered with protective energy. Emily felt the medallion grow scorching hot in her pocket. When she pulled it out, the symbols on its surface had rearranged themselves, forming a message in an ancient script that, somehow, she could now understand. "The Guardian chooses the worthy," she read aloud, the words carrying power she didn't comprehend. Michael's years of police training seemed inadequate in the face of such otherworldly forces, but his instincts remained sharp. He noticed patterns in the rogues' movements. They were trying to surround the circle, their corrupted medallions creating a dark energy that began to interfere with Luna's protective field. "The crossing points were never meant to be permanent gateways," Thomas explained urgently. "They're safety valves, allowing necessary exchange between realms to prevent cosmic imbalance. Forcing them open permanently would tear reality apart." The ground beneath their feet trembled, emphasizing his words. Luna suddenly stopped her pacing and faced the rogue keepers. The symbol behind her ear began to glow with intense blue light, matching the energy emanating from her puppies miles away. Through their connection to her, the young ones were adding their power to their mother's protective barrier. The white-haired woman raised her corrupted medallion, dark energy crackling around it. "The Guardian's choice means nothing now. We've unlocked the ancient bindings. The crossing will open fully at midnight, with or without your cooperation." She began chanting in an elder tongue, her words causing visible distortions in the air. Emily felt a sudden connection to Luna, an understanding flowing between them through the medallion she held. The dog's memories flooded her mind, generations of guardians protecting the delicate balance between worlds, the sacred duty passed down through carefully bred bloodlines. She saw glimpses of the other realm, beautiful but alien, and understood why the barriers must remain controlled. Michael noticed something crucial. The rogue keeper's powers seemed to weaken whenever they stepped on certain points around the circle. The original symbols Theodore Hammond had carved into the bridge contained a hidden pattern, a key to maintaining the boundary's integrity. But with the bridge's markings weathered by time, the protection was failing. Luna's eyes met Emily's, and in that moment, a choice was presented. The Guardian's power could be transferred, passed to a worthy human vessel to strengthen the failing barriers. But such a transfer would come with a price. Accepting the mantle of Guardian meant binding oneself to the crossing point forever, becoming part of the ancient magic that maintained the balance between worlds. The clearing crackled with opposing energies as midnight approached. Emily stood at the center of the ancient circle, the medallion pulsing in sync with her heightened heartbeat. Luna's choice hung in the air between them, a decision that would affect both worlds. The rogue keepers continued their dark chanting, reality itself wavering around the clearing's edges. "You can't possibly understand what you're interfering with," the white-haired woman snarled, dark energy coursing through her corrupted medallion. "These barriers have kept humanity in ignorance for centuries. Breaking them will bring enlightenment to both realms." Michael positioned himself between Emily and the rogues, understanding instinctively that whatever was about to happen, Emily needed to be protected. The symbols Theodore Hammond had carved into the bridge suddenly made perfect sense. They weren't just markings, but a map showing the proper flow of energy between worlds. Luna's puppies, still at the shelter, began emanating waves of pure energy that Dr. Chen reported were visible from miles away, their combined power reaching across the distance to strengthen their mother. The ancient bloodline's true purpose became clear. They weren't merely guardians, but living anchors, helping maintain the delicate balance between realms. Emily felt Luna's memories and knowledge flow through her more strongly now. She saw generations of guardians maintaining the crossings, allowing controlled exchanges that kept both worlds healthy while preventing chaos. The rogue's plan would destroy this careful balance, leading to a catastrophic merging that neither realm could survive. In that moment of clarity, Emily made her choice. She knelt beside Luna, placing one hand on the dog's head and holding the medallion high with the other. "I accept the Guardian's duty," she declared, her voice carrying the weight of ancient power. The medallion flared brilliantly, and Luna's eyes met hers with approval and understanding. The transfer began immediately. Blue energy flowed from Luna through Emily, the symbols on the collar brightening until they seemed to lift off the leather, inscribing themselves into Emily's skin in glowing lines. Each mark carried centuries of knowledge and power, transforming her into something more than human but not quite otherworldly. Michael watched in awe as Emily rose, her eyes now carrying the same ethereal glow as Luna's. The rogue keeper's attacks dissipated against a barrier of pure light that emanated from her transformed form. The corrupted medallions in their hands began to crack, unable to withstand the pure energy of a true guardian. "The crossings must remain regulated," Emily spoke, her voice resonating with Luna's wisdom. "Balance isn't achieved through force, but through harmony." She raised the medallion, and the ancient symbols on the ground responded, creating a cascade of light that restored the weakened barriers. The white-haired woman screamed in frustration as her plans crumbled. The corrupted medallions shattered completely, their dark energy dissolving into nothing. Thomas Hammond stepped forward, his silver eyes shining with tears of joy. "The Guardian's choice has been made," he announced. "The balance will be maintained." Luna pressed against Emily's leg, their connection now permanent and unbreakable. The puppies would still have their mother, but they would also have something more, a human guardian to help train them in their sacred duty. The crossing point pulsed once more before settling into its natural rhythm, the barrier between worlds restored to its proper strength. Michael holstered his weapon, understanding that his role would change as well. As Emily's partner, he would become part of this ancient tradition, helping protect the secret of the crossing and those who guarded it. The clearing slowly returned to normal, though now he could see the faint shimmer of energy that had always been there, hidden from ordinary eyes. As dawn approached, Emily stood at the old stone bridge, her new marks glowing softly beneath her uniform sleeve. Luna sat beside her, both of them sensing the proper flow of energy between realms. The puppies would grow into their roles as auxiliary guardians, their bloodline continuing its ancient purpose under the guidance of a guardian who bridged both worlds. The mystery of Luna and the bridge had been solved, but a new chapter was just beginning. In accepting her role as guardian, Emily hadn't just saved two worlds, she had become part of a legacy stretching back through time, protecting the delicate balance that kept reality itself intact. End of story, dear readers. We hope this tale of mystery, courage, and supernatural destiny has captivated your imagination. The story of Emily, Michael, and Luna reminds us that sometimes the most extraordinary adventures begin with a simple act of kindness. To continue exploring more thrilling narratives like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. We've prepared a special playlist of similar supernatural mysteries that you can find by clicking the link on your left. Share your thoughts about the Guardian's choice in the comments below. What would you have done in Emily's position? Your support helps us bring more magical stories to life. Until our next adventure, may the Guardians watch over your dreams.